If it's happening in Burbank, you ought to know, so tune in to the Mike and Roy Show.
And now,
Mike and Roy.
hello, Burbankers,
and welcome back to another special episode of the Mike and Roy Show. And we have an extra special guest here tonight, Dr. David Gordon. If you don't know who he is, you live in Burbank, you must be living under a rock, because Doc was on our city council for 11 years, mayor for a year. You're, to me, Burbank Illuminati, if you will. And we're so excited you're here. I have to fess up and say I have pestered you a couple of times, called you since you have been gone off the council for thoughts on where Burbank is headed. There's been issues that have come up. Now we got an election here on Tuesday, and Measure P is on the ballot. And I called you a couple of days ago. I thought, let me try one more time. And sure enough, something about this measure lit a fire under you. And here you are to speak about it. So I'm super stoked you're here. Mike,
yeah,
what do you got?
Me too. I'm so happy Doc Gordon is here. Roy and I have come out and shared our feelings about Measure P. We're against Measure P. We don't think we need to put the burden on the residents of Burbank for our budget crisis. We think we have a spending problem in Burbank within our city staff, and
Not a revenue problem.
Right, that's where we think the problem is. And we've offered solutions to our city council. They've asked us for solutions. We come to our city council with solutions. They don't seem to want to listen
Kind
to
of
us.
ironic they're asking us for solutions, Mike.
And before we
Third
get Doc Gordon in here, I want to share with you just two of the solutions that Roy and I think can fix this problem, this budget problem. One of them is the fact that we have over 400 city employees making in excess of $150,000 a year. If we could just ask those employees to take a salary adjustment of just 10%, we would make up over $8 million a year. Also, development impact fees. Burbank is begging developers to come into our community, but we're not charging impact fees that are equal to our surrounding communities, like Glendale charging $17,000 per unit of development. Pasadena charging $19,000 a unit for development.
And how much in Burbank?
$2,000 a unit. We could make up over $30 million just on those development impact fees right now. Doc Gordon, we know you feel like we feel about Measure P. Now we want to hear you. Tell us about Measure P and your feelings about it.
Well, I think it's a wrong approach. I don't think that just adding additional sales tax, we've had sales tax increases not too far past here in Burbank with Measure M, Measure H, all sorts of lofty promises of how this money is going to go and make things better for everybody. Measure H is supposed to improve housing for people. Housing is not getting more available or less expensive for people, despite the increase in sales tax. Measure M went to, the Metro, was added expense for taxpayers. I don't know the percentage of Burbank people that benefit from that, but once again, this is added to their tax burden. But now when you have Measure P, this is very much, once again, a regressive tax. It is hitting the hardest and the worst, and it will hit the hardest and the worst, the people who can least afford it. And those are folks like senior citizens on fixed incomes, other retirees or disabled folks, where they don't have the ability to offset that by added income or working harder. In addition, these sales tax increases not only go to the people who are consuming items, it also goes to business owners such as myself. If I bought stationery or equipment from the office, added sales tax. That needs to be passed on to somebody. It's not just that we'll absorb it. That sales tax is one way they're passed on. And also, the people working at these businesses need more income, so their wages have to go up. And it's a cycle. And it's really an exponentially regressive tax. And it's not going to solve the problems as effectively as been mentioned by alternative solutions that we do have revenue. Developers are still going to come to Burbank. I've been involved in both planning board and the council members. I've seen time and time again, many developers are interested in coming to Burbank. They will come. They will develop. They will spend money. Of course, they want to do it in the most economic way possible, but they're not going to just ignore it if there's certain fees. They know that's carrying the freight. That's what it costs to do business in Burbank. So I definitely think that at the very least should be examined prior to taking the surgical axe and chopping off more of the income and revenue of our citizens. As far as salary adjustments, I know and was involved in some very tough decisions involving raising salaries for senior executives, and I thought it was a cycle. It was like keeping up with the Joneses and buying a more expensive car. Well, we have this salary, we have this salary. It kept going up, and I oppose these things. Now, when you ask why do people or can the council not listen to you, well, it takes some real courage, political courage sometimes to make these tough decisions. And there's some political price, there's heat to be taken perhaps, but that's why people are elected to the council, to make these tough decisions. They are there to represent the very best interest of the people in the community. And that includes the entire community, people who are very well off and people who are struggling to get by. And I would hazard to say there are probably more people struggling to get by than there are people that just don't have to worry about their revenue, their income coming in. So again, I am opposed to the Measure P. I don't think it's going to solve our financial problems. It may be a patchwork, temporary fix until the next time, and there'll be another proposed sales tax increase. So I'm very strongly opposed to this, and I would urge people to look hard and carefully before they cast their vote on this particular measure.
Well, Doc, that's a lot of good info right there. And Mike brought this up a minute ago. I want to add a couple of numbers to where he was with salaries. Excuse me. Back in 2011, you might remember that you were probably in the council then, I'm assuming, right then, about then. We had 20 city employees in the city of Burbank making over $250,000 a year. Now, we're adding in benefits and things like that. Fast forward to 6 years later, 2017. Last year, there were 68. So something is going on where we're threatening these cuts. That's usually the frontline guys. But the folks at the top making all the big money seem very protected, and there's a lot more of them now. And again, where's the fiscal responsibility? Mike, you and I were there Tuesday night, and one of our council members said we have to think of our city like a corporation.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, I wanted to jump up and say, exactly. And if your corporation's ready to go file Chapter 11, you tell everybody, look, we got one last chance. Everybody takes a pay cut. In this case, we're saying 10%.
And I've said it on our show, Roy. Twice in my lifetime have had to take a pay cut because my company has come to me and said we need to cut back in ways. So can everybody take a small pay cut? I said yes. For the benefit of the company.
And Mike, last thing, sorry, because somebody's going to say, where did he come up with that $30 million in development impact fees? Because you said that number. Let's qualify that, what that is. That's the old IKEA project.
Right.
First Street Village.
Yep.
And down the street from there, Premier on First.
Right.
So combined, those three projects are over 600 apartments, condos, whatever you want to call them. And again,
way over. It's
Pasadena,
over 1,000 units.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Forgive me. And if that was in Pasadena or Glendale, it would be about $19,000 per unit into the general fund for the city.
I'd like to add something else.
So that's the $30 million.
Excuse me. I'd like to add something else that's very important. For many years, when I was in the planning board and then when I was in the council, we had what was called redevelopment in the city of Burbank. And the city redevelopment agency was lent millions and millions of dollars from the city to do various projects, and there were reasons for that. And that was on the order, when I first got involved with this, on the order of $60-some-odd million. I had called for that money to be returned to the city coffers. Had that been done, which it wasn't, I was mocked at the time, but had that been done, we would not be even here discussing this. We would have more than enough money for all the higher salaries, all our city service needs, and to keep our budget balanced. But then when they ended redevelopment, that money was set aside. However, that money is now coming back. And we're not hearing this in the discussion, but now we're getting more and more of the tax revenue that used to be siphoned off into redevelopment is now coming back into our general fund. And this is not being discussed, and it should be discussed instead of just saying, let's go and maximize the sales tax we can give to the people, and maybe we can get it through and we can go on spending. You know, if you continue eating the way you've been eating, you're not going to lose weight, okay? At some point,
tell me about it, Doc.
At some point, and I can speak with authority, at
put the fork down.
At some point, you got to push back from the table.
You know, and that's a great point, Dr. Gordon, that we have not brought up. And it just goes back to the management of our city budget. And as Roy and I have said many, many times, Burbank doesn't have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem. And Doc Gordon, I think you just really supported that. And Roy and I don't think the burden of our budget crisis should be put on the residents of Burbank by raising our income tax. I think we just need to manage our budget a little bit better.
I just want to add something else, and I can say this of years of business.
I'm
here
sorry,
in City-
sales tax. I said income, I meant sales tax.
Yes, I just have to add something here, and that is, if the purpose of this sales tax is to increase sales tax revenue to the city, I firmly and honestly and sincerely believe it will have the opposite effect.
Yes.
People can go to neighboring cities to purchase large items, vehicles, appliances, household goods, and even shopping, routine. We have here in town a Costco. It's one of the busiest, I think, in the nation. What if people are paying a significant percentage? I see $100 transactions on a regular basis. And if it's costing dollars and dollars more for all these transactions, people can go to the neighboring cities and go to other stores and patronize them and literally save quite a bit of money over the course of a year.
Sure.
And so, unless there's a uniform state tax that's increased, I think it's rather short-sighted. I think you're going to lose sales. We have car dealership in the city. We have a big box stores and appliances. We have our studios here.
Airport.
And they also pay sales tax. And again, it's already expensive to go to certain of these venues. And again, it's continually gets passed through. So when you talk about what's being passed through to the community, it's not just how much they take out of their pocket for their purchase. They're also having to subsidize all the other people, the business owners and workers in the community, all of their purchases as well. I think it's an exponentially regressive tax, and I really urge voters to look at this carefully and what the real impacts are going to be.
Well, Mike and Roy, the show here, we're big fans of work and all the time you put in service to the city. I want to let you know that there's life outside the Mike and Roy show. You have fans. I was literally riding my bike down the street the other day, a couple of blocks over, and a neighbor made a homemade sign. It's sitting out there and it says, "No on Measure P, no more new taxes." And in the bottom, in a big square, it says, "The city council should have listened to David Gordon."
Oh!
So I got to tell you, that is on somebody's lawn. I'm not making that up. So you got friends out there. We still remember your wisdom.
Well, I had 11 years to voice my views, and what was listened to or not listened to, we'll see. We'll see the wisdom of those words over the years.
Well, Dr. David Gordon urges you to vote no on Measure P. Roy and I urge you to vote no on Measure P. We don't need to raise our sales tax and put the burden, on Burbank residents for our budget crisis. We just need to be a little wiser how our city's spending money.
Because we know Burbank doesn't have a revenue problem.
We have
a spending problem.
Thank you, Dr. David Gordon, for being with us, and we will see you next time on the Mike and Roy Show.
Mike and Roy.